everybody. I'm a little behind schedule today, so I'm going to take the first 30 seconds or so to adjust everything properly here. Not sure my audio is balanced well either. That seems to be a running theme for me. Alright, it sounds super loud to me, but it doesn't look that loud on the balancing stuff I've got, so I think we're just going to run with it. If anyone hears anything bad, let me know. But if this is working properly, it is. Good. All right, so welcome back, everybody, to another week of our Future Group Friday series. For those not familiar with what that means, this is a weekly stream that I am running as a developer of the game, trying to communicate updates, how development progress has been over the last week or so, talking about stuff that we've been working on, stuff that we're working towards, and then working through community feedback, as you can see on the candy board, followed by a feature building segment at the end. This should run about 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the day. Feel free to hop in or out as you wish. And for anyone who's not familiar with anything TagPro related, TagPro is a free-to-play browser-based capture the flag game you can find in any mainstream browser. It's 4 versus 4, and you are a ball, and that's all you need to know. But free-to-play, tagpro.gg, if you'd like to check it out. Learning a lot. Yeah, I got a comment on one of my YouTube videos about 2 weeks ago that was talking about, like, I watched like 10 minutes of your video and could not figure out what this game is, how it works, how to find it, so I figured I'd throw in a little something at the start. I'll work on the wording of that. But for today, I want to start off as usual with our development updates. If the bitrate seems off or if I'm starting to get choppy, let me know. I have no idea what my hairline's doing today, so don't look up there. And let's see what we got. So this week, similar to the last 3 or 4 weeks, we're kind of in the final phases of that next release, like I've mentioned, trying to put the last little pieces together. So the updates aren't as exciting, but they are equally important. So I'll run through the list now. And obviously, if you have any questions, let me know. But a week from today would have been the 10th. So where were we then? We had just talked about some updates to a really big branch. There was a lot of back and forth on how to be displaying the active games that are going on to allow people to see which games are about to be finished, who's in those games. So kind of letting you estimate when your next game is going to launch, basically, for ranked, but also giving you the option to directly spectate a game should you so choose. So that was where we stopped last week. Since then, I personally have been working on the tier thing. So we talked on stream last week about the tier balancing, which, just to summarize, is for ranked, how do we distribute all of our players? How do we distribute all of our players across the tiers that we have so that games are happening at every level and so that games are happening at the quality level that we want them to be at? So right now we've got some kind of default numbers in here. You can see the percentiles that it's supposed to be at. So for example, tier 1 is these top 3. It's supposed to be about 5% of the total population. Tier 2 is supposed to be 5 through 15, and you can see some numbers on the sides. Obviously, these numbers aren't perfectly accurate. It says 5 for the top one, and we've got only 1 player in the top. But what I was trying to work on this week was the rebuild of this whole thing, basically. And so we talked last week about potentially distributing tiers by games played, and I went down a huge rabbit hole with this. Shout out to Tumblewood for humoring me on this. We were trying to figure out if spreading players by games played instead of only spreading them by skill level would allow lower tier games to happen more reliably. I'm going to skip ahead to the answer. We decided the answer was no. We couldn't quite figure out how it was going to actually maintain real tiers, because no matter what you do, with the most active players being the players at the top of the leaderboard, just by nature of the game, there was no reliable way to skew it without putting like 75% of the player base in the bottom tier, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of having tiers. It made sense from a, if you ignore all else and your only goal is to have games happening, it did make sense. But if your goal is to have an actual tier system and ranking people according to how good they are at the game, it just didn't really hold up. So we've officially walked away from that option for now. But we did not decide on doing nothing. We did decide that there was a better way of going about this. So Orchid and I had about a 4-day long conversation probably trying to figure out how to actually break players up. And what we landed on was using something called a k-means 1 distribution, or k-means 1d. It doesn't matter what it's called. What does matter is that it takes all the players that we have and it tries to figure out where the tiers should be. And so what it's going to end up looking like, and we'll see what this does in practice at the release, but instead of having a bell curve where you have very few players at the top, and I got yelled at for doing my bell curve backward, but for the camera, I think this is the top tier. Yeah, okay, so this is your top tier. So you have curves down towards the top, big bump in the middle, and then curves back down the exact same way at the bottom. And what we're figuring out, and we've known this for a while now, is that most players are over here, few players are over here. It's not quite an even distribution on the bell curve. And so when we actually ran the numbers based on this season's ranked data, we found that the largest tier, which is currently set to 4 and 5, should actually be 5 and 6. So it's going to be close to a bell curve, but it's not going to be a perfect bell curve. And so what we're hoping that will do is kind of force those games to happen at every level anyway, because it's keeping some distribution, but it is lumping the players who were slightly less active together anyway. So we'll see how it shakes out. The goal obviously is to get games to happen at the bottom so that lower ranked players will actually play ranked again. And we'll just kind of have to see how that shakes out. So I have a little bit more detail on that I'll cover in a minute, but that's what the majority of our time was spent on this week. The other part of that was a lot of back and forth, was deciding who do we actually include in the conversation when we're trying to decide how big a tier should be. If you look at the board right now, you see a couple of players with hourglasses next to their names. This is players who have not played in a little while. So for example, DT has not played in 17 days. Ritual, I guess 5 days, but a couple of these players, they haven't been playing for a while. I don't know why that's the case there. There you go, 17 days. Basically, we want to try to have the tiers be built around the players who are actually playing the game, because the goal is to get games happening at every level. And if you have a whole tier full of players who are not playing, and you're still including those players who are not playing in the final counts, your tiers are going to be skewed improperly. So we've added some checks in on the back end, basically saying, is this player reliably joining the queue? Should we be including them in that count to decide how many tiers we have for the actual game? And what comes along with that is that we're not going to guarantee 8 tiers at all times. It might be like 6 or 7 tiers if there are fewer players playing consistently. So again, we're going to have to see how it shakes out. It should be a lot more dynamic than the current one is right now. It just expanded up to 8 and that was it. This next thing does allow it to come back down if players stop playing quite as frequently. So a lot more discussion than code writing. I'm still in the middle of that branch right now, but it's going to show you how many tiers there are in a given region, I guess, region and game mode. But yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded way of saying still in progress, but it's going to be hopefully better. So that was my week. What else did we do? That might have actually been it. All the stuff that I just talked about, I kind of skipped over the actual writing of the code, but that was everything that went into this week. I know we talked about something else, but I guess we didn't push it yet. It's calculating inactive players and deciding when somebody is eligible and all that. But yeah, that's the majority of it. Sorry. Question from Grant. When tiers shrink, are the bottom names for the tiers being truncated off? I think what you're asking is, like, will ranked ball go away? If so, the answer is yes. You would just see up to iron. If it goes down to 6 tiers, you would just see down to bronze. So the bottom ones wouldn't be there because there's nobody in those tiers. And these numbers will be adjusted accordingly for the number of players actually in those tiers, and the percentages will reflect the percentiles of the active player base that's in each tier. So, the other thing I added with that was talking about with expanding the tiers. So we start from 3 at a baseline. For like the first day of ranked games, you have 3 tiers only, and then every time you get to 40 players per tier, you expand up to a new tier. So if you have 120 players, that's 3 tiers. If you have 160, that is supposed to be 4 tiers. But because we're adding in a mechanism to go over and come back, like to have 5 tiers and then come back to 4, we didn't want it to just be hovering around like 200 players where it goes to 200 and goes to 5, then it goes to 199 and it goes down to 4. We didn't want the tiers to keep expanding and contracting, so I added in a surplus where you have to have 40 per tier plus an extra 10. So you wouldn't expand to 5 tiers until you get to 210 players, and then you would stay at 5, 209, 8, 7, 6, 5, all the way down to 199. And if you drop to 199, then it does go back down to 4 tiers, but you would have to get back to 210 to expand back to 5 tiers. So it should be a little bit more stable because you expect a couple players here and there to start and stop playing day by day. So again, we'll see how it shakes out. I'm pretty happy with where it is right now, but a lot of the stuff that we've been doing, you can't really tell exactly how it's going to work out until you just go for it. So again, we're getting close to that release. We're hoping for sometime next week because this basically what I'm working on and what Bash is working on with the inactive checks are the last things that need to happen for the release. So hopefully some testing starting in the next couple of days as well. So stay posted for that. So that was this week in development. I really want to get this damn thing out the door. I really do. But anyway, moving on to our canny board. We had a little more activity this week, which was good to see. So let's start off with the first one. 5-star rating system for maps. That way there's no drop-down menu and it's more in your face, so maps get reviewed more. Originally suggested by Rain on Discord in suggestions from Maybe. So this is something that's come up in the past and has been shot down in the past. I want to see if I can find that post. So the reason this was not taken has to do with how players actually vote on their maps. And this is more the MTC's wording than my own, but I do agree with what they're saying here. So just to show you guys what we're looking at here, with maps, you have a drop down where you can say, I like it, I'm indifferent, or I dislike it. And what this request is saying, instead of having 3 options, we should have 5 options. You will note, if you look at the screen, you can see there's a favorite map option over on the right here, and there is a remove map, or sorry, there is a least favorite option. So you can say you don't like that map a lot. So we have a modified 5-star system right now where you have your 3 middle options, and then you have your extreme good and your extreme bad on that list. And so the reason we chose what we have now over a straight 5-star rating system has to do with polarization of opinions. If you are a player who thinks about the map and you're like, I kind of like it, I kind of don't like it, and you vote based on that, like you're a little more nuanced in your decision, you are more often than not going to be voting in the middle. Whereas if you're a player who doesn't think about that at all and you just say I like it or I don't like it, you're always going to vote at the top 5 stars or at the bottom 1 star. And so what we decided, and we being the MTC in this case, is that the players who aren't thinking as hard about their decision are going to wash out the players who are, because they're going to be voting more polarized every single time, and those opinions are going to rise to the top instead of allowing the whole community to come together and make a decision. So what this system forces you to do is you're limited in how many maps you can mark as your favorite or your least favorite. So you can have that polarized opinion, but you can't have that polarized opinion on every map that you have available to you. And so it's still a 5-star system. It just doesn't present as one because we don't want it to. So that's why this wasn't implemented in the past. It's why I'm going to close this now as well. See a question from Grant. Wouldn't mind seeing if there were a way to add favorite or least favorite to the scoreboard. Yeah, that's actually a really fair point. So what Grant is saying is we have this whole system here, but if you're in a game, at the end of that game, you do get a little pop-up that says, would you like to rate this map? And it's got those 3 options, but it does not have the star or the thumb. And so I'm going to argue with myself here just for the sake of the conversation. If you offered that in the game, I think you're actually promoting those more polarized takes on it. Whereas if you come here and you have to look at all the maps together and see the whole rotation, that's a lot easier for you to decide, yes, I do, or no, I do not like this map. Whereas if you're only looking at that one map with that game that you just finished, I'm not sure that you can have that nuance in your opinion. So I don't know. I could go both ways on that one, but I see your point. Map voting is a thing that I'm hoping we'll get a lot better with the shop because we can offer rewards for actually submitting votes. So getting votes is the hardest thing for the MTC. They really need these numbers to actually do something. So for the 5-star rating system, I'm going to close it down. Grant, if you want to submit that as a separate option, we can talk through it next time. But as it stands now, I don't see us changing course on this. I'm trying to figure out if there's an easy way to say, watch my stream to talk about this a little more, because I don't want to type all that out. But suggestion has come up in the past and been decided against by the MTC and Future Group. Poll 5-star systems promote polarized votes. Our current system is a modified 5-star system. Check the maps tab for most least favorite options. Okay. That's good enough for me. Stat milestones. Oh, so Aaron, what does MTC or whatever they're called have? Sorry, let me go. What does the ranked MTC have numbers on what each map's win percentage on the votes are? So the ranked map panel, I think is what they're called, RMP, is probably only going to exist for season 0, but the MTC in the future is going to have access to selection rates for maps. Two-part answer with that. One is that map presentation is still broken, so maps with names closer to the start of the alphabet are still being displayed more frequently than maps closer to the end of the alphabet. That is fixed in the next release. Along with that fix, we do have map selection rate API data that we'll be sending to the MTC, so they'll have access to head-to-head and I think cumulative selection rates for each map, so they can decide what to do with that rotation throughout the season. You did not realize that was the skewing, because yeah, that's why a flaccid type map keeps coming up so often, because it starts with A flaccid. It's at the top, so it's more often it's coming up like, I forget the numbers. Orchid ran like a raw crunch of the numbers. It was coming up like 30 or 40% of the time for ranked games, which is ridiculous, because on the back end, you look at it, we're using a random selector, but it's a known issue with that random selector where it doesn't actually randomize the options. So from a coding standpoint, we just said, okay, pick a random map and good, but that random thing that we use doesn't actually pick a random map. So it's like, what the heck? We built it right, but it just wasn't built with the right tools, so it ends up being wrong. So that will be fixed in the next release. We have a different randomizer good to go. But yeah, that's why you're seeing that. But to answer your original question, yes, the MTC will have, starting season 1, better data for ranked maps, who's picking them, and how often they are being picked. So, stat milestones. You know those congrats things that show up at the end of games for degrees/flares? How about one of those for milestones? 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Caps wins games, turns tags. Okay, that's an interesting note. I feel like we just did something similar to this recently. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, I think it was to do with saved games. I think we were saying... yeah, thank you, Grant. A message in the chat is like, this player just saved the game. So I guess it would be similar to that, but for longer term milestones. I'm not opposed to this. I'm trying to think of what kind of things people actually want to know about. Like, for example, if you get your 1,000th cap, would you say that at the end of the game, or would you say that mid-game? I'd say probably at the end of the game. The downside of that is maybe they scored twice and now it's their 1,000 first, but who cares? Like, they still got 1,000. How high do people actually get in these counts? I'm looking at all-time capture. Oh, yeah, okay, people get pretty up there. Yeah, It's just me, obviously. People have more playtime than I do, but yeah, it seems. My only concern with this is how often would it happen. I don't want this happening like every single game because I don't want people to tune it out. I'd like to be something where they're like, "Hey, that's really cool." And so for things like, I wouldn't do wins because we already have degree flares and degree flares are wins based. So I wouldn't do wins. I could see captures working. Returns, is that cool? Like, would you be like, oh wow, that's really like good for you, or would you be like, I don't care? Like, if somebody gets 10,000 returns on their career, like I have 160,000 returns. Like, I feel like 10,000 isn't really like. I don't know. What do you guys think? It's not like it's not bad. I guess if you just did it when a zero was added, like you wouldn't do 10,000 and 20,000 and 30,000. That'd be too much. But if you just did every time a new zero was added, starting at certain metrics, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty harmless. I'm gonna put it in. We'll see what happens. I think this will require more of a discussion with the future group. But add chat milestones for game stats. Oh, bigger problem actually. Thinking about the development side of things, you'd need to know. Yeah, we could just pass in the all-time data, I guess, with player creation. That wouldn't be the end of the world. So I'm gonna keep this as a. I'll just make a ticket, whatever. No, I'm gonna make a Google Doc because I want to talk about this with the team first. At the end of games, notify the lobby when a statistical milestone, not statistical, when a stat, that's what it means, whatever, was reached. EX 1000 captures. And I'm just going to put that to the side and say this is under review because we'll require additional discussion with the future group. Idea is supported but needs to be refined for relevant stat categories and proper implementation. Will be revisited in the future. Okay. Casual is always showing 0 players in my region until I join a game. Huh? There are no players queued in your region. Try another. Oh, so okay, this is a player with multiple regions selected. I wonder if it's overwriting the value. The way this count works, we could probably get rid of this casual thing, honestly. The ranked one is relevant because you might have like 10 players queued, but you're only eligible for games with a few of them. But for casual, you can see how many players you're queued with right there, right off the bat. So we probably don't even need to have that. I'm gonna say, unless somebody thinks otherwise, I'm gonna say the answer to this is just to get rid of this message altogether. It was added before we had these counts here. These counts are much more accurate, much more up to date than this count is down here. This is a socket based emit. It's every time you get matched with somebody or attempted to be matched with somebody, it says how many players it tried to match you with. But yeah, I think I'm gonna make a ticket to just axe this entirely. Remove casual matchmaking updates from the joiner. at the bottom left of the joiner page, we display a message casual u plus waiting. Is that accurate? Or there are no casual players, yeah. With the addition of player counts on the region selector, this message is both redundant and often inaccurate. It can be removed entirely. Do not make any adjustment to the ranked message, as the total player counts in a ranked region do not reflect the number of players that the user is eligible for matches with. The other thing to keep in mind is if it would be confusing for some people, like they don't know which one is their number. Obviously it's highlighted green, but we have on the way with this next release the Happy Friday Doodle. Thank you, Timmy. Hello. Hope you're doing well. In the next release, we have the expanding automatic option thing. So if you are a new player in the game and you queue up for the first time and you have automatic selected, it's going to add regions until you get to one that has games happening. So if you're a European player and you join in and you have automatic selected, it will try to find Europe first. But if there are only 2 people online, it will then add US East. If it still can't, it'll add Central, etc. So much more likely to get a game than to just sit in the joiner. So that should reduce the need for this message as well, because it's going to bring you to a region with games anyway. So I don't think I need to write that in the ticket, but this is a low effort improvement enhancement, and off it goes. So I don't know what to mark this as. I guess like we're fixing the problem by just removing the hub. I guess it's planned. So I should add this as a relevant candy post, if so. I don't know why I just clicked in my head. I think I forgot to add a ticket last week to one of these ones. I'm going to check on that in a minute. Where is this? Oh, bug reports. There it is. Relevant candy post. Okay, we're going to say planned. The message at the bottom has become redundant and inaccurate. It will be removed in a future release. Good, okay. A way to host groups from your computer instead of TagPro servers. Huh. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what would even go into making this happen. This is way over my head. This is gonna be an instant under review. Will require discussion for viability and yeah, I don't know what this would really do for us, so I'm gonna say we'll talk about it, but I have no idea what we would do with that. Make replay interface interactive after replay ends. Oh, this was that Reddit post that just came up. Somebody was saying that they would like to mess with the seek bar after the game ends. So Bash had a better answer than I could here. So the reason... Where am I? Get rid of that, get rid of that. So the reason after a replay ends that you can't mess around with anything, and I'll just show you guys what that looks like real quick. Just for an easy example. If you go to a replay and you're watching it and the replay comes to the end, you lose the ability to click around on that timeline. And so the reason that happens, as Badge was saying, is that when the game ends, the client says it's done, and that's it. So nothing else actually works. So the way that replays work, it's playing back all the socket messages of that game as if it was an actual game. So it's kind of tricking your browser into thinking that you're watching a game. It stops doing that when the game ends. Everything shuts down properly, and so that means you can't just back up because you'd have to start everything over. So we just force you to refresh the page right now. So the request is saying, can you not do that and just have it work fine? And there's no reason we can't do that. It would just take a little bit of time on the back end. So let's make a ticket for this real quick. Allow. Actually, I should make sure there isn't a ticket for this already. Give me 2 seconds to check that real quick. Don't want to create duplicates. Just look up replay real quick, and then I keep saying real quick, I'm sorry. Improvements to URLs, AFK messages, hotkeys, zoom toggling, sprite cleanup. These are all the tickets that we have open about replays right now. Scroll wheel for zoom in and out. That's a fun one. Game type filter to the public games tab. That'd be good. Follow flag carrier option. Invalid games filter. No, it doesn't look like we have anything related to this. So allow the seeking navigation bar in replays to work as expected after a game ends. Currently, when a replay ends, the nav bar is disabled along with all buttons related to the timeline. Instead of removing this functionality, preserve it to continue working. One thing to think about, when a game ends, there is 30 seconds of extra game time after the actual clock expires. And this is an opinion here. If you are in that end of game state and you have that backward button where it goes back 10 seconds, should that go backward 10 seconds in that end game state? Or should it go back to 10 seconds before the game has actually ended? And just to show you what that button is, these ones over here. So these are scrubbing forward and backward 2 seconds at a time. This goes back 2 seconds if you watch the clock down bottom. And this one goes back 10 seconds at a time. Same thing going forward, same idea, 10 seconds and 2 seconds. So if you're at the end of the game and the game is ended and you wait another 10-15 seconds and then click back 10 seconds, should that take you back to exactly 10 seconds earlier, or should it take you to 10 seconds left in the game? I'm not sure. I think for the sake of the ticket, I'm going to say if the game has expired, has ended, and is in the post-game period, using the back 10/back 2 buttons. Post-game is it's either 30 or 25, I'm pretty sure, yeah? Are you surprised how long that is? That's when you get kicked out of the game back into the joiner. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 30 seconds, unless it's 20, but I don't know. Someone feel free to fact check that. Point stands though. Using the back 10, back 2 buttons. Let me know what you get. I'm pretty sure it's 30, but should rewind I'm gonna say in the post game. I think that's the easier option. So in the post game. No need to skip back to before the game ended. All right, that's good enough for now. I'm gonna say this is probably a high effort if I had to guess. I don't actually know anything about the replay nav bar. That's all bash, but that'll be in there now. Ticket has been submitted internally. Has not yet been assigned to a developer. Will be included when time allows. Okay, and last but not least, we have when you start spectating, you are zoomed in a little bit too much and you can't see the whole map. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. Let's find out. If I go to spectate a game right now, this is a live game. Whoa, I'm zoomed way out. What is this? All right, so it says you're zoomed in a little bit too much. I think I'm zoomed out a little bit too much. Is this just the map that I'm on? Because if you press the Z key, it'll bring you to the center and then it'll size the map up properly. So ZZ, and you'll be good. But I don't know. I'm questioning this one. That's the replay. Sorry. What else can I pull up? Let's see about this game. Nah, I'm zoomed out again. What the heck? I don't know. I'm not seeing this. This issue was not reproduced when attempted. Are you able to list out your screen size and any scripts? Oh, and browser. Screen size, browser, and any scripts you have running for troubleshooting. So you're saying instead of letting people figure it out, just double tap Z for them so it sizes up properly? I'm not entirely opposed to that. It's kind of strange that it's not sized up to match. So, I mean, it could be a related issue. I guess I see what you're saying. Like, I'm not seeing what Bambi is seeing in this, but I am seeing a problem. And I think both of our problems are solved by the same thing, which is just the sizing that the Z key promotes should be the default sizing. And that could honestly be related to the replays on mobile issue, where it was like, I think I showed it on stream. It was like the map's like little tiny dot in the middle, just completely zoomed out. So I'm gonna keep this as under review, but I am gonna add a separate note related to zoom issues. Let me make sure there's nothing open already with that. We have automatic zoom toggle when switching between player perspectives. Scroll wheel zoom in out again. And that's it for zoom. Oh, player info is the wrong size when zooming. That's the other one. No, so we don't have anything related to this. Fix default zoom levels. I think this is related to viewport scaling. We made a change about 7 or 8 months ago about like fitting the page to the window, basically. I think Orchid worked on this, which was it's a better experience for new players on computers. I think it's had some negative downsides for other users. We need to just look into this a little more closely. So for when spectating games or in the pre-game, wow, spelling today, pre-game map overview, we are getting many reports related to zoomed in too far or too close. That's a weird way to say that. Zoomed in or out too much. How's that? This is likely related to viewport scaling. I'm trying to remember the name of the change that we made before so I can reference it. Viewport. Is it like fit to screen? Is it? I can't find a ticket for it. Oh well. Viewport scaling or some other fit to page change made recently. The issue is more notable on mobile, but is also present on CPU with no scripts enabled, as we just recreated. So this is going to be a requires troubleshooting. And we're going to just send that off. So that exists now. So we have a record for it, which is good. And that is the last Candy board post that we received. So I didn't have a solid plan for what to do in our post feature building thing. So I have a couple smaller things that I'd like to work through, all stemming from, actually no, not all of them. Two of them are stemming from requests that we've had in the past that I want to go into a little more detail on. One is looking ahead at the next season of Ranked. So it's been teased for a while now that we're going to be adding neutral flag to the ranked selections for season 1. That plan is still in place. I'd like to get that in. I'm not sure how we're going to do with balancing the tiers. I think we're going to let it shake out first and see who's queuing for what, and then we can make some adjustments if we need to past that. But basically what we need to decide on is the settings for neutral flag before we can actually have it added in. So with capture the flag, we started off at a foundation of what were casual games doing before Ranked was released. So what were pubs basically in the past. So you've got 6-minute games, we changed that to 8 minutes. You've got a 3-cap mercy rule, we changed that to 5-cap mercy rule. You've got your overtime rules that were completely changed. We got rid of the respawn timer. We got rid of the juke juice flag carrier bonus. And we added clutch time. And so we need to go through that list and decide, do we do the same things for neutral flag? Do we make some similar changes? Most notably, clutch time doesn't work the same way in neutral flag as it does in capture the flag. And we have a couple of options to talk through with that as well. If you look at your clutch time options, you've got 4 different choices here. So you've got enabled always. With enabled always, the game does not end regardless of the score until all flag carriers who were holding the flag before clutch time started have captured or popped. So with neutral flag, this wouldn't really work, because if the game was like a 4-1 and it might work. So if it was 4-1, the team that's losing could never win the game, because if the all right, let me back up a second. The hard part about this question is, for capture the flag, only one team can hold the flag at a time, but for neutral flag, you have handoffs. So if the flag is held by the team that is winning, the question is, do you want to end the game in that case, or do you want to allow them to still be tagged by the other team and then a capture happens? Because if the game is a 1-cap game, say it's 2-1, and you have the team with fewer points holding the flag, if they sack into the enemy, now the team that's winning 2-1 has the flag. But if they sack into the enemy in a way that's also forcing them to hand it off right into the end zone, it would be a tied game if that handoff is allowed to happen. So for neutral flag, you'd want some slightly different rules where you'd want it to be anytime it's within one cap, regardless of who is holding the flag, the game does not end. But does that promote a weird meta where you have maps like where it's hard to spike in your own zone and you have a player who's not really in any threatened position, but they're winning. They need to find a way to spike themselves or capture the flag. Like it's not that it would be bad necessarily. It's that I'm worried it's too dramatic of a meta shift. Hey, Fly, actually, I'd like your opinion on this, Fly. Because like, the goal, like, I want to find cool things that people enjoy, but I also don't want to be just dramatically shifting how neutral flag is played for the first time that we're adding in this new queue. So I think I talked about this a while ago with Fender and Bamboozler when they were running that neutral flag TagPro League. And just join to context, please. Sure. So backing up, we're talking about when we add neutral flag to ranked, what kind of settings changes need to come along with it. Talking about the changes that we added to capture the flag from public games, you have 8 minutes instead of 6 minutes. I think that can hold true for neutral flag. You have overtime rules completely changed. You no longer have the juke juice on the flag carrier. You no longer have the respawn increment. I think both of those should carry through to neutral flag. You just have standard overtime, basically. I think that's what we need to do for neutral flag as well. But the other change that we made for capture the flag was that we added in clutch time. And so we're talking about clutch time is different for neutral flag than it is for capture the flag because the flag needs to change hands for captures to happen in a lot of contexts. We're gonna. I don't think anyone's arguing for pub overtime in neutral flag. I think that might honestly not last very long in casual games either. That's a different conversation though. So basically, do we even discuss having clutch time, knowing that it is handled differently than it is in capture the flag? Because if you're trying to hand off the flag to get a capture, that handoff cannot happen with the current rules because the team that is currently holding the flag has to be losing. But if you're the winning team and you get handed off through you, as soon as you get the flag, the game just ends instead of you handing it off into that capture. So do you say... So yeah, so the question is, do we explore this and then also add in some changes to the clutch time rules? Because we have the ability to modify these rules, but the current options that we have for clutch time don't cover things like handing off within 1 second. That's just not a thing that we can do right now. So the first iteration of neutral flag would have to probably be without it until that change can be finished, and then we could add it in from there. Or do we hold it until we get that change in? And it's a pretty small change, so it's not like that would take forever. So that's what we're trying to work out now, is how do we do it? Because the other option you have is that you do enabled always. And the way that enabled always works is that no matter who is holding the flag or what the score is, the game does not end or transfer to overtime until there are no flags that were held at the start of clutch time. So if there's a neutral flag, a single one of them, and it is grabbed before clutch time starts, even if that flag is handed off, it was not reset and it was not captured. So it still counts as a regulation flag. So it would allow those handoffs to happen, but it would also force games that are not really winnable to continue until that flag is captured or popped on a spike or a gate. So back to that original example, a 4-1 game would just continue. So we'd need a modified version of that to only be within one. I think without the change, you still need clutch overtime, because what if you were past all but time just ends? Yeah, that would be unfortunate. That's what we're trying to avoid. The always on, yeah. So the always on, like, it could work. And I had this conversation with Fender and Bam again, and they decided not to go with it just because they weren't quite sure how it would play out. So I'm a little hesitant to just go ahead and say, okay, everyone's going to do this now because I just decided on a whim that it would work. Like, I don't want to be too imposing with that opinion. So I think I'm just hesitant. That's all. Because the other option you have is that you do tied only, but that's just basically overtime. So that's meh. Deciding on what was the best way to do stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Hello, Toppy. Good test. So I'm probably gonna take this conversation to the steering co and have a conversation there as well. But I think if we can expedite a enabled within one cap, where it's not that you're winning necessarily, it's just that it's within one cap, or can we modify the enabled winnable only to handle itself slightly differently for neutral flags? That's the other option, where you can say winnable only if it's a red or a blue flag, the team that's holding the flag needs to be losing. But if it is a neutral flag, as long as a flag is held and it's within one cap, it doesn't matter which team is holding that flag. And that way, it would only trigger with one cap differences, and it would only end when the team scores on either side or captures. So you could have some games that were one cap games that turn into two cap games because the team that was winning ends up scoring again, but that's not really that big a deal. Toby says, Cheese, can you increase the acceleration and speed limit for private group games from 300 to higher? Toby, what are you trying to do that requires more than a 300% acceleration boost? I got to know that before I can humor that request. Fly says, can you demo the always on secret? I think seeing how it plays would be helpful. Yeah, I mean, I can show you in a group now if you want. It's not too fancy. It's just... Did my explanation not make sense? Enabled always with neutral flag basically just means that the game does not end until the final hold of the game is scored or spiked. And spiked includes gates in that sentence. So it ignores handoffs because the flag was grabbed before clutch time started. And so that flag is a regulation flag until it pops or scores. That's all it is. I just think if you played it out, oh, you mean like an actual play test with, okay, to see if they like it. Yeah, that's a very fair. And we could do that in private groups too, just to see how it plays out. That's super doable. So yeah, let me make a note of that. We should organize, put this in the future group chat, organize a quick play test with clutch time options in neutral flag. Boom. Okay. Got a note of that. Cheese, expect more of me. You're doing great, Fly. I never doubted you. So, all right, that covers that. Oh, the other conversation we have to have, and Orchid brought this up, so thank you to him. Currently, at the top level of neutral flag TagPro League, they do play 3 versus 3. I am not super keen on adding that into public games right off the bat. I think that's a pretty dramatic meta shift from casual. It might be something that we discuss in the future. The other problem with it is that it works at the top level where you have like the people who are actually very mechanically skilled and reaction time and all that. But it doesn't work quite as well at lower levels. And the whole point of ranked is that it's supposed to be for everybody to play with similar strength players. So it might be a thing where we say if it's a certain tier, it can be 3v3, but otherwise it's 4v4. I'm not quite sure how to go about that. But for the initial implementation, I definitely want to keep it at 4 versus 4 just for ease of access, and we can review that more in the future when we get there. So that's the other part of the conversation there. I think that's everything that we need to discuss for neutral flag, though. I don't think there's any other details other than picking maps, but that's a thing I can pass off pretty easily. So yeah, I'm going to call that good enough for that. What else do we need for rank? Keep 4v4. People want 3v3 because of spacing. Yeah, that's definitely worth exploring. But yeah, I think we're on the same page there. So that was all I wanted to talk about for ranked. If anybody has any other conversation points they'd like to get into, let me know. I'm going to switch gears now and move on to 2 kind of pretty minor features that have been brought up in the past that I'd like to explore a little bit more just to see if we can turn them into something that is workable. Yeah, it's not as much of a problem in neutral flag. That's why I'm willing to entertain it. But yeah, later. So first one I wanted to talk about was an older request that came in here from Anam back in 2023. I think this is a really cool idea. So the premise basically is that before you spawn in a game, so switching gears, we're in a game, you're in a TagPro game, you just popped and you are respawning. This feature request says, can you use your arrow keys to change where you are going to be spawning before you actually spawn? And I think this is a really cool idea to explore. I'm not sure what use it would have or where we would put it in, but I feel like it's better than random spawning, because we've done a lot over the years to remove RNG and kind of make it a skill-based game and not a random luck-based game. The easiest example to point to with those would be power-ups. Instead of a random power-up spawn, you now know ahead of time which power-up is going to be spawning at which location. Things like the rolling bomb change could be argued like that, where you don't just lose the pup immediately when you get it. Timers reducing luck because you know when that element's going to spawn. Your first read here was this first spawns only? Yes, but I'm changing that because interest to map making would add more interest to map making spawn locations. Oh well, I like my idea more. Sorry, let me read this chat a little bit more closely. You'd have to shift camera to spawn location rather than where you die. Yes, you would, and we have the ability to do that now with the natural the pan instead of just jumping, so that's doable. Would add more interest to map making spawn locations. Yes, so you would have different. So yeah, you'd have to have a limited range, I think, of where you are allowed to spawn. Let's make a document for this real quick, just to mess with it. So manual selection of spawn location. So just shotgun thoughts that we have. Limited spawn locations set by map makers. I think that's an easy sell because we already do that. So it's just making sure that you can only move to boundaries that you're allowed to be in. Question that I have for you guys: do you get the ability to move immediately a tile, or do you have to move the ball at the same pace that a ball would move normally? Like, can you move tile by tile, or do you roll there? Fly says tile by tile. Grant, do you have any thoughts on that one? Same pace as ball will be tilting. Yeah, that's probably true. So I guess you would also have to display available tiles to move towards. And then if you click and hold, does that jump tiles or only move one? You wouldn't be able to do diagonals probably if you're doing that. You're envisioning immediate? Okay, we'll stick with that then. Probably can't do diagonals. With a different color circle, highlighted, etc. I'm picturing that you can see all spawn locations available and just move arrow key to which, the closest in which direction. Yeah, so you move one tile at a time. You can only move to the closest tile. One tile at a time. Per key press. You would need to do pan from popped location to spawn location. What else do we need here? Multiple people spawning. Can you be choosing the same? Yeah, I think you can choose the same, because even right now at the start of a game, you can spawn on somebody else's ball. We do have a ticket open that says we should stop doing that, but I actually don't agree with that ticket. I think stacking spawns is actually fine. But it's going to be a super quick pan. Well, I mean, it's what you do right now. Even for larger maps right now in replays, if you pick a big map, let's see. What's a big map? We don't really have big maps anymore. I don't don't know. I'm just gonna pick this one. If I go here and I say, okay, I'm going over here, like it zooms pretty quickly across the map. So I don't think we have to worry too much about the speed, because it's all like it gets there in the same amount of time no matter how far it's going. The speed of the pan is always a set number of seconds. So I don't think we have to worry about the timing of it too much. You think you need to jump immediately back to where you're spawning, and can you change your spawn right up until before you spawn? Those are good questions to ask. Is there a start, stop in movement eligibility, or is it just from when you pop to when you spawn? And then I'm leaning towards no limit. The other question is, do we remove random initial spawn placement so you can memorize key presses to get where you want to go? Or do we preserve random and you need to find your path? You have 3 seconds to get them back in base. Pick a spot, move to that spot, and go. I mean, 3 seconds is a lot more time than you might realize to do that. Imagine you were a TP trying to kill a spawner and they're just jumping around. I think that's kind of a case for it and just limiting spawn locations, right? Because how does it look to other people? I think display. You would need to move the actual spawning ball sprite with the players' movements. Players' movements? Whatever. With the player movements. Toppy says, oh gosh, but it's going to be harder as offender on regrab to fight against anti-re if people can just switch their spawn when on re. You already only... Toppy, periods and spaces. All right. Already only have 3 seconds from the time their ghost ball shows to prepare the anti-re fight. You're the first person to get juked by a ghost. Well... Part of what you're saying right now, guys, is kind of why I asked initially if we should move tile by tile or if you roll there, because if you're rolling, at least it's predictable. Like, you know where they can go at a certain time. So if you're going to be nerfing their ability to move tile to tile, that's kind of what it's doing by letting them roll before they spawn, right? That's why I brought that up initially. I'm not... All right, Toppy bought into that. I don't know if Fly's sold on that one though. Do you maybe have like, you see the vision? Like, do you change the acceleration? Can they get there faster? Because there is something to be said about the fact that if you have non-continuous spawn locations, like you mentioned having a spawn over by like the power up, they could never roll. Like, you'd have to have contiguous spawn points, and that would be a new rule that we'd have to add to spawning locations. If rolling would need to require is it contiguous the right word there? Continuous? I'm gonna go for it. Contiguous spawn points cannot jump across a void with no spawn tiles. But counterpoint to my own argument here, if you allow them to roll when they spawn in, they're not spawning with momentum, right? You'd have to remove all of their momentum as soon as they spawned in. So spawner cannot have momentum when they spawn in. So that might be a little bit jarring for the player who's moving around, because you think like, oh, I'm moving to the left, and I'm not actually moving at all. Like that maybe will be a little bit disorienting. I don't know if that would be a big negative or not. So that would be an important thing. Why use contiguous when you can mean adjacent? I don't know. I don't have an argument for that. I low-key only like spawning as a moving ghost if you just suddenly come in as if you did have momentum. Okay, let me add this to the conversation. Instead of cannot, I'll say should spawner have momentum when they spawn if they were moving. Okay, add that to the conversation. It's almost harder if their physics are different. So you're saying you predict them coming at you, so you have to like play anti. Because I mean, I do this now. If you see somebody spawning, you kind of roll at their spawning location to hit them right as they spawn. So you'd need to be anticipating their physics a little bit differently. If they're rolling towards you, obviously they're not going to just get taken out as if they were stationary. So it would be more intuitive from a physics standpoint. Yeah, so if you can prepare for them, then thank you for the follow. Fly, if you can hit them, then yeah, I think that makes sense. I think we're talking about different things, Grant. Tell me more. I feel like I'm on the same page as Fly. Where she's saying, I'm going to say the whole thing again just to make sure. Fly, call me out if I'm wrong. If we're going with moving spawn locations, it is better for the spawning ball to preserve whatever momentum they had as they actually do spawn, as opposed to spawning them in with no movement at all at the tile that they were on as they were moving. So if the moving ball is spawning, now they're in the game, at no point do they lose that momentum that they had. So if they're not spawned yet but they're moving and they let go of their keys, when they spawn in now, they're going to keep rolling after they spawn in, as opposed to the alternate, which is that they're moving, they let go of their keys, and they spawn in. Or even if they're holding their keys, they spawn in and then start to accelerate again. That's what we're not wanting, as far as I can tell. From the cheese dog, it sounds like if you get tagged while boosting, you just like keep that moving. Oh, no. This is after you've respawned. So anything that you have when you first were popped is completely gone. That no change to that. Oh gosh, adjacent, please. Thinking pre-dev, yeah, no, that would be, ugh. Hate that. Although that's a bug right now in Gravity. I think with Gravity maps, if you have a certain amount of momentum and then you refresh, it doesn't reset your momentum, so you spawn back in with whatever downward momentum you had, and it like you can shoot out of the spawn location. But that's a different bug. Toppy says, I like no momentum, so person on regrab can still overpower them. Well, Toppy, you can still overpower them. You just got to earn it. Dying as a sniper, but it's okay because you respawn. Yeah, no, I don't like that. Okay. What else do we need? This is going to be an experimental group thing to start. This is not going straight into the game if and when it gets built. So are we all on team roll now, or are there any holdouts for the tile by tile approach? The benefit of tile by tile is you don't need to have adjacent spawning locations. You can get there a little bit faster. You prefer your static player, but so it's like a clicking thing though, or do you? So okay, so that's back to the tile by tile argument then. So if we're tile by tile, you were just mentioning if a TagPro is trying to catch somebody, you need to have some kind of cooldown. What? Do you like it or not? I'm looking for... All right. We're going to humor it anyway. If you're tile by tile, you need to add some sort of cooldown. Some sort of cooldown needed to limit jumping around. Think TP lead or regrab trying to set up. Do you mean an image in 3 minutes? Okay, perfect. Grant says, feels like you'll get a lot of spawning on the same tile interactions, but with opposing teams. My counter to that is that a problem necessarily? Because you can get that now. You know where they're spawning. I don't really see the issue. Yeah. What else do we need to know? We're marking where they can go. Probably just highlight the tiles easiest. One tile per key press, that's fine. So key down events only. And then I think the pan is fast enough that we don't need to worry about this. Is there a start, stop, and movement eligibility, or is it just from when you pop to spawn? We're saying no limit if we're doing, no limit if rolling, potentially yes, limit if tile by tile. Get rid of the bold here. All right, that's the other thing. Do we remove the random initial spawn placement, or do you always start from the same starting location? Oh, sorry, question from Grant. How does that work with momentum? I think that's what Fly and I were talking about a little bit. All right, if you're rolling, you would preserve whatever momentum you had. So if the answer is same starting location, we'd need to pick a certain tile. How would we go about picking one tile? Because think about current maps that exist right now. How do you pick which spawn tile to use? Would it just be pick a random one at the start of the game if there isn't one set? You could say pick random tile if one is not set in the map data. Oh, I see what you're saying, Grant. That's actually, I have no idea. That's a really good point. If a player with momentum goes from spawning to present and is underneath another ball, how does that momentum transfer to the other ball? I don't know. So no, Fly. So what he's saying is the person who just came into existence is the one who has momentum. Because right now the person who's spawning has no momentum. So if they're underneath somebody, nothing happens because they're just getting in the way. It's as if that player. But if you have two people moving instead of just one person moving, I think it would just be like they collided before their ball overlapped. Like so, if they're top-down view of my hands, each hand is a ball. This ball is not spawned. This ball is spawned. Right now, the way that it happens, if this person's moving and they come on top and then this person spawns in, this ball bounces off as if it was hit right where they come together. So if they're both moving and then they overlap and then it spawns in, I think what would happen is it would just be as if they collided normally. We'll have to test that pretty extensively to make sure it's not going to cause issues, but I think it would be okay. Yeah, well, we'll have to play around with that. I got a note for it, so we can explore that. That's a really good point, though, to be bringing up. But back to our spawning things. If we wanted to have a set location, it would need to be pick one random tile. If one is not set in that data, use that tile for the whole game. Allow, so we need to modify the map editor to select a, what would you call it, like a primary spawn? Could be done with spawn weights. Have the highest weighted spawn location be the only spawn location, and allow spawning players to only move to other spawn tiles, basically. So you can select, like, it's easier if I just have the map editor in front of me. Whoa, what the heck is this? Sorry, 1 second, let me... How do I clear a map? There we go. All right, if I have a map, if you have, it doesn't really matter what I do here. It's, this is my map, yay. It's beautiful. It's a little spiral galaxy there. So if you have a flag on each side and you've got a player spawn, you can put these little balls, and these balls are saying these are my spawn locations. So what we're saying for the purposes of this feature is that all of these need to be adjacent. You can't have anything that's not connected or it wouldn't be included. So I'm not sure how would you handle stuff like this, where like everything is adjacent, but like if you're here, how do you get from here to here? Like is no, like do you just say, okay, they're moving and you show them as this intermediate spot, but you don't actually let them spawn there? Press down. Well, my concern is that, say you have like an extreme example, like it's like this, and you have them spawning at this location here, and they hold down, and say they're like here, it just, you jump there. So that's my problem, is if you're rolling and you're gaining momentum as you roll, like that makes sense if you're rolling from here to here, but you just roll, and now you have all your momentum, but you're down here now. Like it's like a teleport basically. Like if you pretended there was a portal to here, it would be as if you just whoosh went down there. Yeah, I'm talking about rolling again. I thought you would like that more. Is that... So you're saying for rolling, you get rid of all of this, and you say there's no limit to how far you're allowed to go. You start here no matter what, and anywhere you manage to get in that time is totally fine. Is that what you're saying? Because I'm okay with that. I think that works. I just want to make sure we're clear, because what I had in my head was that you're limited to a certain zone based on spawn tiles, and you have to like stay within this zone. But that was my other. So well no, because you could combine that and say that if we think 3 seconds is too long, that the first second you're locked, and then like for 2 seconds you can move. Like we have some more freedom than just 3 seconds of free range movement. The problem is we need to pick something that works for most maps and not something that only works for certain maps, because we don't really have a map specific way of allowing that to be changed. 1 second of movement? How far can you get in 1 second? I'm curious. Can they use boosts? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no for everything element-wise. They can't interact with anything. Anything they touch is just like a wall, including portals. Boosts could probably just be ignored instead of being treated as a wall. Anything that would pop you is a wall. Anything that would not pop you. Now, portals don't pop you. Doesn't matter. We'll talk about that later. Okay, let's say for the panning, 1 second no pan, 1 second of panning, 1 second of movement. How does that work for games where the respawn time is not set to 3 seconds? Would it have to be 1/3 of respawn time? Not hard-coded 1 second. But then if you have a respawn time of 30 seconds, they can get anywhere on the map. But that's minigame territory. So like minigames are already working around weird things. So I think we don't need to use them as our target. Spawn jail. Well, that's what I was, again, back to the vision here. That's what I was saying about if you have one spawn tile and then you have a bunch of other spawn tiles and you say they can't leave this zone here, That was kind of what I was going for with that. Where you're saying, okay, you can move as much as you want in 3 seconds, but if you get to here, you're stuck. You can't go any farther than that. But that brings in new issues, like I was saying, with this kind of spawn pattern, where if you're here, how do you get down to here? It's not intuitive. How do you show to a player that you have to go around to get down there? It's just, obviously on a map like this, it doesn't really make sense, but in a real situation, that could still come up. So that's my concern with the approach. You're pro static spawn and not rolling spawn. Wait, Fly, you mean you're anti this whole thing, or you're pro like the tile by tile? Because the other option you have is you say tile by tile, but you simplify it way down. Well, yeah, okay, that's actually exactly what I was about to say, is you simplify it way down, and you say that it's tile by tile, but you only have a couple of options to pick from. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now it's okay, it's tile by tile, but you're just going between these 5. You did DM me? Oh, sorry, I'm busy. I'm streaming. Let's see. Oh, look, it's exactly what I just did. That's really funny. It's basically this exact image, just on a different map. That's really funny. Okay, I'm not opposed to that either. Let me write that down. Up here. Limited number of tile locations to spawn at. The problem down here again is, how do you pick which spawn tile to use? Because if you look at some of the maps that exist right now, let me think of a example. Is Audacity a good example? If I remix this map, nope, bad example. So some maps don't even have those spawn tiles. They just use the flag as their spawn tile. I'm not going to be able to find one here at a reasonable time, but one default starting spot. Did you want people to navigate with the arrows still, or just have a button to cycle through them? I think we could probably do both of those things. If we go with the limited number of spawn locations, it wouldn't be much of a difference to say any key that you press, it just moves you along this rotation. I think my concern with adding in things like space would be like I get people chat while they're spawning, but I don't, as long as it's not enter, that shouldn't matter. I think what we can do is we can take the tiles by X coordinate and then by Y coordinate or something like that, and then put them in a list, and then left and right just cycles through that list. It's not like we're going to have so many options that people can't find the one that they want in a reasonable time. The other question with that is, do we limit how many moves they get? Like, do you limit the player to X number of moves? Because you were talking, Fly, about the TagPro lead problem, where if that TagPro is trying to figure out which tile the player's on and they keep jumping back and forth, is that going to be better or worse as a meta every 0.25 seconds? A cooldown makes sense. Yeah, some cooldown needed. 0.25, 0.5 seconds. So yeah, something to play around with there. And then, all right, back to, I think still the main issue that we have right now that we need to figure out before we can move on is, if we have a current map that exists now, and that map has a lot of spawn tiles, do we let them all just exist as options, or do we try to limit that somehow? Like if I look at a map right now that looks like this because they picked all the spawn locations that they want, do we say, okay, when you get on this map, you can just choose any of these ones that you want? Or do we say that map makers need to just figure it out, make a better map with fewer spawn locations using this new approach if you want to use it? Again, it's a group option, so it's not like it's critical that people do this, but what's the cleanest solution there? Yeah, the MTC. And it's not going into the base game, so it's not like we need to get the MTC on it right away. But yeah, okay, I'm fine to table that problem until later. So just use if tile by tile, use all submitted spawn tiles as options until the map is updated. And then if people want to use the option, they can just make a map that has different options. That's fine. That's fine. So with that one, we're back to what Toppy wanted, which is that it doesn't matter how many times you move, you have no momentum when you spawn because you're just a stationary ball. Yes, I think we're leaning tile by tile again with limited spawns. Fly had the vision. But yeah, okay. So anyone watching this replay later, if you have thoughts about this, obviously feel free to share. Oh, that reminds me, I forgot to check the form that I have for questions. Let me pull that up real quick before we move on to our last little bit. Where'd that go? For those who are not aware, I made a little form, basically open response, anonymous questions. If you have anything you'd like me to answer on stream, you can submit it. But I need to actually find the form to send. Here we go. So if you would like me to answer anything in the future, there is a form pinned in this chat here. I'll put that on the description of the YouTube video as well. We did get 3 responses last week, so let's run through those real quick and see what we got. Number 1. What does Yalpa do behind the scenes? Okay. For those not aware, Yalpa is a prominent North American streamer, well known for his work on streaming scripts and his high quality streams in general. For those who don't know him that well, he is also associated with the Future Group behind the scenes. He's been working with me for a while on things like sound pack work, texture pack work, some of the audio files that the game has as new songs that we added in. Yalpa was a part of that conversation. He's also been a big part of the ongoing behind the scenes redesign work that we have going on, trying to figure out how we're going to make this game look a little more presentable as we get it up on Steam into a larger audience. So he's basically anything creative based, images, videos, audio. He's usually involved in that conversation if I need him to be. And that is his more or less unofficial role behind the scenes. He does a little bit more for the leagues. He keeps track of the North American League jerseys, scripts, all that stuff. If you go back, there's a pretty big document. Let me pull that up real quick. The logos and jerseys. Form where he maintains this basically. So it's got every season of North American League TagPro. You can find their logo, their jersey that they use in game, and then a flare that they use on Discord, all the way back to basically the start of competitive TagPro. If you go way back, obviously there's some assets missing from some of the earlier days, but whoop, NSFW, not putting that on stream. But yeah, it's a pretty impressive document. He put a lot of time into this. So that is another thing that he does. And he probably does more than that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head, but very important behind the scenes person. If you ever see him, say thank you, please. And make sure you encourage him to get some sleep because he doesn't sleep enough. So shout out to Yalpa. What else do we get here? We've got bulk replay download question mark. I'm not sure why that had to be an anonymous thing. Bulk replay downloads. We have a current problem with replay downloads that might be related to what this is for. Currently, 360 Broscope is working on this, but it's related to downloading a file at the same time as somebody else. Something to do with, there's some timing aspect of it. If you try to do it twice or somebody else does it at the same time, it doesn't download properly. There's a crash, and we get an error log for this, so we've been keeping track of it, but we don't have a solution for it just yet. If you are watching this and you submitted that question and you want me to add a bulk replay download option, just submit a ticket for it. That's a very approachable problem. I'm not sure how I would go about doing it. I know Bash might have better opinions, but we have it's not like you can't download games. We have a download button right there. So if your goal is just to download an entire page, just ask. We can do that. Next, we've got, why does eloflation happen? And will the skill score system be any different for season 1? Excellent question. So eloflation is something that people are referring to when they talk about skill scores here. It's not technically ELO. ELO is a different system that we don't use, but people just call it that, which is fine. It's called a skill score for us using openskill.js or a modified version of it. Doesn't matter for this conversation. But eloflation, or I call it skill score creep, is the observation that's an accurate observation that over time these numbers have gotten very, very high. The initial implementation of ranked went with the assumption that we were only going to get players at about 1,000 at the top, and you can see we currently have players scraping at 1,700 right now. So the reason this happens is because behind the scenes at the end of a game, we have some stat-based adjustments to the game. So if you are in a ranked game, there's a probability that you will win the game. It's somewhere between 40 and 60%. And when that game happens, no matter how it goes at the end of the game, it looks at the score, how long the game took, and then the performance of each individual player. And what it does right now is if you are leading your team by a ridiculous margin in any category, like you had 85%, for example, of your team's returns, it's going to give you a boost on top of whatever you earned for that game. So if you won the game and you would have earned 3 points, it'll give you a boost and you'll get 4 points. Those are not exact numbers, but if you're a huge outlier in a certain stat category, you will get a boost. The problem with the way that we implemented that was that we did not add any sort of balancing on the rest of the team to remove skill score from you or from the other team. So you'll have a team that lost a certain number of points and a team that won a certain number of points, and those match, but then a couple players from the winning team also get a little bonus on top of that. So now you can see that out of nowhere, we've just created more skill that wasn't in the system to begin with. And so every time that happens, a little bit more gets added into the system over and over and over. And you look at some of these players with thousands of games, over time that has resulted in this ballooning of the skill scores that are on the leaderboard. So this is a problem that we have fixed for season 1. It will not be present in the next season. But the other part of the question is, will the skill score system be any different for season 1? So the answer to that initial question is no. The system itself will be the same. It's still going to use numbers similar to this, but we will be undoing the eloflation, you're calling it, and starting not from scratch, but starting from a much more stable starting point so that it should not run away from us again. And the benefit of that is that these numbers will be more accurate because players who don't play as often won't be hundreds of points behind, even though they're at a similar skill level. And then no matter when you join into the season, you can still rise to the top if you are winning games at a high enough clip. So that was a good thing to have caught. And just ban this Vader real quick. And that will be fixed, like I said, for the next season, which is great. So good question. Good to know my defense hoarding helps. What is the point of downloading them? I'm not sure. You'd have to ask that person. Look at that FM player at number 55. Wow, what a stud. Look at him go. EM. Look at him. And yeah, couldn't be me. Request 2 digits after the decimal for every skill score. I think we did that actually. Have it be 50 instead of 0.5. I think that's also in for season 1. The other thing we have is fixing the gap here if somebody doesn't have a flare it won't inset them. They'll be in line with everybody else and just have a blank spot here, because this annoys me quite a bit. So those should all be fixed for the leaderboard for season 1. Next question. That was a good question, by the way. Oh, I got a new one. All right. I am pro highlighting comp in the base game. Thoughts on granting team logo flares for players during the season to get people interested? That opens up a different conversation related to what leagues are and how the game represents leagues. I don't know if I want to go into too much detail on this, but leagues basically are an unofficial thing. And that only matters because the difference between official and unofficial stems from who is working on stuff and who's responsible for the experience that thing provides. So for example, the moderation team is an official group because when you join a game, you can expect to receive a certain level of moderation that's going to be consistent. Like the game TagPro is responsible for your experience with moderation. The game TagPro is responsible for your experience with maps, for example. The game TagPro is not responsible for how your league goes. It's not responsible for your teammates in a league. Like the Commissioner and Rules Committee, or the Committee for Rules and Coordination, the CRC for the leagues, have no obligation to do what the league, or what the game, wants them to do, because they are an unofficial thing. And that gives them more freedom right now to do things they want to do, like change the game settings. Like they use no kiss right now. They can pick whatever maps they want. Like all the stuff that the leagues do that I think are good things are possible because they are unofficial. They don't have to answer to the game to decide what is best for the people who play that league. And so the problem that barrier creates, though, is that when you want to add in things to the base game, like for example, the suggestion flares for competitive games, there's no obligation in the other direction to be assisting with that. So we have like the competitive tab where we say we want to promote the leagues. I understand, and I'm involved in the leagues too, don't get me wrong. So I want the league to do well, and we want to promote this league, but we can't go above and beyond promoting the league at the expense of the game itself, because it's not actually officially the game. So when it comes to adding things in that promote the league, I want them to be done in a way that's a little bit more integrated in the future, but we're not there right now. So like with flares are an easy example because we haven't added flares in a while. And the reason we haven't added flares is because we're gearing up for the in-game shop, which is going to add a lot of flares, over 100 we have lined up. So when we get to that point, does that open more opportunities for other flares? Probably. But we can't get on a schedule where we're promising every season, which is 3 times a year, we're going to be adding in 20 different flares for all the teams that signed up that season. Like that's just not a sustainable cycle for us to get on. So I want to work towards getting the leagues more closely aligned with the game itself. I don't want to do that at a clip or in a way that makes the leagues less fun or that makes the game less likely to move ahead as we get towards the Steam release and everything. So it's a bit of a balance. Happy to talk about that more in DMs if anybody has questions about it. So this isn't something that I'm saying no, not never doing this, but it's not something we can really promote right now for team logos. The other problem with that is the team logos are usually pretty intricate. They've got a lot of detail in them. Our flares are currently 16 by 16 pixels. So you can't really fit all of that detail down into a little flare and make it look good. Like even these icons on my screen right now, this would not fit in a flare. It's too many pixels. It can't happen. So yeah, a good conversation to have in the future. But sorry, I missed a couple chat messages here. Comp is important because it's the most popular thing as it relates like to getting views and people. Yep. Yeah. From a streaming standpoint, absolutely. I think some competitive players don't realize how small of a percentage of the total player base they are. Sometimes you have a couple hundred players in comp against a couple thousand players who play the game. But even so, yeah, from a spreading word about the game standpoint, absolutely competitive is an important piece of that. And that's why I'm happy to facilitate what I can there. But we kind of got to come together slowly. We can't just throw one into the other. So we'll keep working on that. How about a flare if you are currently playing in that season? Yeah, I mean, it's possible. You can see how long it's taken us to get that done just for ranked, right? To get a flare that says you're playing ranked has been a bit of a a challenge for us. So I'm not against it. Again, it needs to be a little bit farther along than it is right now as an integrated part of the game. So TBD is my final answer. So I had one other thing that we could work on. We are getting up towards an hour and 40 minutes we just crossed. It's a pretty minor thing. We've talked about it in the past. Let's see if I can find it. Actually, if Grant's still here, he'll remember this because I don't think I can. We had talked in the past about rolling sits, where if it's a 3v4 game, what do you do if a player is spawning? Like, can you keep them out of the game until somebody else pops, and then they take the place of the person who just popped? So you get a 3v3 game instead of a 4v3 game, even though you have 7 players in the lobby. I'm going to be honest, now that I've said that premise out loud, I'm not super motivated to do that right now because I've been talking for a while. We are already past 90 minutes. So if anyone wants to do this, drop it in the chat. I'm happy to do it with you. If I'm going to be doing it alone, I'm probably going to just call it and bring that back up next week. Any takers? We'll have details spiral, yeah. It will. I can guarantee that it will. I don't know if I can keep it to 20 minutes, in truth. Yeah, all right. Well, we'll hold off on that one. I'm not sure when I'm going to prioritize it again. But yeah, all right. That's going to be a good wrap up then for me for this week. So as a sign off, I'll just say thank you, everybody who tuned in this week and everyone watching the replay. I know you guys, the replay people, are the majority of our viewers for this. I'll try to get that Reddit recap up again in an hour or two. If you have suggestions for features that we should be adding in the future, please submit them to the feedback tab. If you have a bigger thing that you'd like more discussion behind, shoot me a DM. We can have a little chat about it, and then I'll bring it to stream the next week. Should I get Oni? I'm going to say this wrong. Is it onigiri or yeah, onigiri. I would personally go with the sandwich, but you do you. I can't believe these bozos aren't available on Friday afternoons. Yeah, it's not ideal timing-wise. It's just when I have time. So yeah, I'm gonna go back to working on the tiers like I talked about, and onigiri. Okay, got it. Well, I would still go sandwich, but I'm sure you'll pick the right one regardless. So that's all I got for you. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I will see you all later. Have a good Friday and a good weekend.